What if I told you that some of America's most recognizable brands, the names you've trusted for decades, the stores where you spent Saturday afternoons, the products that defined entire generations, are now teetering on the edge of financial disaster? It sounds impossible, but in 2025, the impossible is becoming reality. Throughout the nation, a silent economic transformation is dismantling familiar routines. Shopping centers that overflowed with customers every weekend now stand nearly deserted. Beloved retailers have shuttered their doors with little notice. Household names that seemed invincible are suddenly filing emergency bankruptcy petitions. And beneath these closures lies a crisis so pervasive that financial experts are calling it the most significant corporate upheaval in modern American history. U.S. Corporate Failures, 2025. The strain is undeniable. Operating expenses have reached unprecedented levels. Spending habits among middle America have contracted to bare necessities. Debt that once seemed manageable has transformed into an existential threat. And as digital commerce siphons more revenue from traditional retail locations, countless companies are confronting a brutal reality. Brand recognition, customer nostalgia, and decades of loyalty no longer guarantee survival. What's disintegrating isn't merely commerce. It's a fundamental piece of American identity, the retailers we depended on, the brands we recognized instantly, the businesses that made ordinary life feel predictable. In this analysis, we're examining 10 household names facing the gravest challenges right now. And by the time we reach number 1, you may never view your community the same way again. Number 10, Bed Bath & Beyond. When Bed Bath & Beyond dominated suburban retail corridors, it felt like an unstoppable force. A destination where newlyweds registered, where college students bought dorm essentials, where those famous 20% off coupons made every purchase feel like a victory. But by 2025, the brand that once operated over 1,000 locations has essentially vanished from the American landscape. The company's final collapse arrived swiftly. By early 2023, Bed Bath & Beyond had already filed for Chapter 11, revealing debts exceeding $5 billion. Despite restructuring attempts, sales continued plummeting. Revenue that once approached $12 billion annually had fallen below $4 billion, a staggering 70% decline in just 5 years. Inventory management became catastrophic. Suppliers demanded cash on delivery, unwilling to extend credit to a company spiraling toward insolvency. Stores that once overflowed with merchandise displayed half-empty shelves and massive clearance sections. Customer traffic declined 40% year over year as shoppers migrated to Amazon, Target, and Walmart for identical products at lower prices with faster delivery. The liquidation was brutal and comprehensive. Every remaining store closed permanently. Tens of thousands of employees lost their jobs. Real estate that once housed these massive retail boxes now sits vacant, creating eyesores in shopping districts nationwide. For communities that relied on Bed Bath & Beyond as an affordable one-stop destination for home goods, the absence has created a void competitors haven't rushed to fill. The brand's intellectual property was eventually purchased for a fraction of its former value, now operating solely online with no physical presence whatsoever. What remains is a ghost, a digital echo of a retail empire that once seemed permanent but couldn't adapt fast enough to survive. Number 9. Party City. For generations of American families, Party City was synonymous with celebration. Birthday parties, Halloween costumes, graduation decorations, baby showers. Every milestone seemed to require a trip to those colorful aisles packed with balloons, banners, and theme supplies. But by 2025, the party has effectively ended for this once dominant specialty retailer. Party City filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in January 2023, listing nearly $2 billion in total liabilities. The company had been struggling for years under crushing debt from a leveraged buyout completed years earlier. Interest expenses alone consumed over $100 million annually, leaving virtually nothing for store improvements or inventory expansion. Revenue collapsed from nearly $2.4 billion at its peak to below $1.5 billion as consumers discovered cheaper alternatives. Dollar stores began carrying basic party supplies at 60 to 70% lower prices. Amazon offered overnight delivery on themed decorations that previously required driving to Party City. Even grocery stores expanded their seasonal sections, eliminating the need for specialty trips. Helium shortages compounded the crisis. Balloon sales, historically a high-margin category generating consistent revenue, became unreliable as helium costs tripled and availability became sporadic. Stores that once filled dozens of balloons daily were forced to turn customers away or charge prices so high that demand evaporated. Inside surviving locations, the deterioration became obvious. Shelves appeared sparse. Seasonal sections that once burst with options now displayed limited selections. Staff was cut to skeleton crews, leaving customers waiting 20 minutes just to check out. Halloween, traditionally Party City's most profitable season, brought crowds that spent significantly less per transaction than in previous years. By mid-2025, Party City began announcing mass closures, shuttering hundreds of locations and leaving entire regions without a dedicated party supply destination. For small towns where Party City was the only option beyond Walmart, each closure represented the loss of something more than retail. It marked the end of an affordable tradition families had relied on for decades. Number 8, Rite Aid. For countless Americans, Rite Aid was the neighborhood constant. The pharmacy where your family filled prescriptions for 30 years. The place that developed your childhood photos. The convenient stop for late-night necessities when nowhere else was open. But by 2025, this iconic drugstore chain is experiencing a financial crisis that has fundamentally altered its national footprint. Rite Aid filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in October 2023, revealing total liabilities exceeding $8 billion. Much of this debt stemmed from failed expansion strategies and legal settlements related to opioid distribution. Court documents indicated potential exposure exceeding $3.3 billion in litigation costs alone, obligations the company could never hope to satisfy without radical restructuring. The store closure wave began immediately. Within 12 months, Rite Aid shuttered over 500 locations across multiple states, concentrating closures in competitive urban markets and underperforming rural areas. Revenue declined 20% year over year as customers migrated to CVS, Walgreens, and mail-order pharmacy services offering better prices and more convenient delivery options. Operational pressures multiplied rapidly. Pharmacist shortages forced wage increases of 12 to 15% in competitive markets. Theft in high-crime urban locations pushed inventory losses to levels that made certain stores unprofitable, regardless of prescription volume. Insurance reimbursement rates for prescriptions, already thin, were further squeezed as pharmacy benefit managers negotiated more aggressively. For communities losing their Rite Aid, the consequences extended beyond inconvenience. Rural towns lost their only pharmacy within 20 miles, forcing elderly residents to drive dangerous distances for essential medications. Urban neighborhoods saw health care deserts expand as closures eliminated walking distance prescription access for residents without transportation. Inside remaining locations, cost-cutting measures became apparent. Reduced pharmacy hours, longer wait times, fewer front-end employees, and security measures like locked cosmetics cases that slowed shopping. Customers who once valued Rite Aid's convenience now found the experience frustrating and impersonal. The restructuring will likely leave Rite Aid as a significantly smaller regional player rather than a national competitor, abandoning vast territories where its presence once felt permanent. Number 7, 99 cents only stores. For millions of Americans living paycheck to paycheck, 99 cents only stores represented something precious, a place where $5 could buy a week's worth of snacks, where cleaning supplies didn't require budget juggling, where fresh produce appeared at prices that seemed impossible for seniors on fixed incomes. Especially these bright yellow stores weren't just retail, they were financial survival, but by 2025, even dollar stores are discovering that extreme value retail has become unsustainable. 99 cents only filed for Chapter 11 in April 2024, citing insurmountable operational challenges and changing cost structures that made their iconic $1 price point economically impossible. The closures came swiftly and comprehensively. By summer 2024, the company announced it would permanently close all roughly 370 stores across California, Arizona, Nevada, and Texas. Liquidation sales began immediately, with fixtures and inventory sold to competitors and liquidators. By fall, the brand had essentially ceased to exist as a retail operation. Multiple factors converged to destroy the business model. First, inflation made sourcing products at price points that allowed $1 retail mathematically impossible. Suppliers demanded 15 to 25% price increases on everything from canned goods to cleaning products. Freight costs remained 40% above pre-pandemic levels, eating into already razor-thin margins. Second, theft became unmanageable. Stores in urban California markets reported shrink rates exceeding 10% of inventory, losses that would challenge any retailer but were catastrophic for a business operating on margins of just 2 to 3%. Security measures like locked cases contradicted the quick, convenient shopping experience customers expected. Third, competition intensified. Dollar General and Dollar Tree expanded aggressively into 99 cents only territories, offering similar products with more flexible pricing that could adjust to inflation. Traditional grocers introduced value tiers that undercut 99 cents only on specific high-traffic items, siphoning away price-sensitive customers. For communities that depended on these stores, the impact was immediate and painful. Low-income neighborhoods lost their most affordable grocery option. Seniors faced longer trips to find comparable prices. Families stretching limited budgets discovered that the one place they could reliably afford basic necessities had disappeared overnight. The closure of 99 cents only stores signals something broader than one company's failure. It suggests that even the most aggressive discount retail models are struggling to survive America's current economic reality. Number 6, Christmas tree shops. For decades, Christmas tree shops occupied a unique space in American retail. Despite the name, these stores sold far more than holiday decorations. They were year-round treasure hunts where suburban families found affordable home goods, seasonal items, kitchen gadgets, and random discoveries that somehow always ended up in the cart. But by 2025, this beloved brand has joined the growing list of retailers that couldn't survive the convergence of debt, inflation, and changing consumer habits. Christmas tree shops filed for Chapter 11 in May 2023 under the ownership of Bed Bath & Beyond, itself already in bankruptcy. When Bed Bath & Beyond collapsed entirely, Christmas tree shops became collateral damage. By late 2023, all 80-plus stores began liquidation processes, with final closures completed by early 2024. The business faced impossible odds. Operating costs for large-format stores climbed relentlessly. Utilities increased 20%. Property insurance jumped 30% in coastal markets. Labor expenses rose 15% as minimum wages increased across multiple states. Meanwhile, foot traffic declined 35% as customers shifted spending from discretionary home goods to essential necessities. Inventory management became increasingly difficult. The treasure hunt model that once defined Christmas tree shops required constantly rotating merchandise and surprise finds that delighted shoppers. But suppliers, wary of retail instability, demanded stricter payment terms and smaller order quantities. The resulting inventory became predictable and sparse, eliminating the browsing appeal that drove traffic. Online competition proved devastating. Items that once felt like unique discoveries at Christmas tree shops could be found on Amazon, often at comparable or better prices with free 2-day shipping. The inconvenience of driving to a physical location, browsing crowded aisles, and standing in checkout lines simply couldn't compete with clicking a button from home. For the communities that lost Christmas tree shops, especially in New England and the Mid-Atlantic, where the brand was strongest, the closures removed a cultural touchstone. These weren't just stores. They were weekend destinations where families spent Saturday mornings, where seasonal traditions began, where the simple pleasure of finding a bargain created memories. The empty buildings they left behind, often in prime retail locations, now serve as stark reminders of how quickly beloved brands can vanish when financial pressures overwhelm loyalty. Number 5, David's Bridal. For generations of American women, David's Bridal was where dreams became tangible. The place where brides found their wedding dress, where bridesmaids coordinated, where mothers of the bride discovered the perfect outfit. For many families, especially those on tighter budgets, David's Bridal made wedding elegance accessible without requiring thousands of dollars. But by 2025, even this iconic bridal retailer is struggling to survive mounting financial pressure. David's Bridal has filed for bankruptcy twice in recent years, first in 2018 and again in April 2023, revealing a business model increasingly incompatible with current economic realities. The company disclosed debts exceeding $130 million and began immediate store closures and restructuring efforts to avoid complete liquidation. Multiple challenges have eroded the business. First, American marriage rates have declined steadily, dropping nearly 20% over the past decade. Younger generations are marrying later, marrying less frequently, or skipping marriage entirely. This demographic shift directly shrinks the customer base David's Bridal depends on. Second, wedding budgets have bifurcated dramatically. Wealthy couples spend more than ever, but they're shopping at high-end boutiques and custom designers, not mall-adjacent chains. Budget-conscious couples increasingly turn to online retailers, secondhand marketplaces, and rental services that offer designer quality gowns at 50 to 70% below traditional retail prices. Third, the pandemic permanently changed wedding planning. Virtual try-on technology, home delivery with free returns, and social media styling services eliminated the need for in-person shopping at David's Bridal. Younger brides accustomed to online shopping found the traditional bridal salon experience outdated and inconvenient. Operational costs compounded the problem. Maintaining large showroom spaces with extensive inventory in hundreds of locations became financially unsustainable. Bridal consultants, a key part of the experience, commanded higher wages as labor markets tightened. Alterations, once a profitable service, became cost centers as skilled seamstresses became scarce and expensive. Inside surviving David's Bridal locations, the strain shows clearly. Inventory selections have narrowed. Appointment availability has decreased. Staffing has been reduced to minimum levels. The personalized, attentive service that once defined the bridal shopping experience has been replaced by rushed consultations and pressure to make quick decisions. For communities, particularly smaller markets, where David's Bridal was the only dedicated bridal retailer within 50 miles, each closure forces brides to travel hours for dress shopping or rely entirely on online purchases without ever trying on their wedding gown. David's Bridal survival remains uncertain. The brand that helped millions of American women celebrate one of life's most important moments now faces an uncertain future in a retail landscape that has fundamentally transformed. Number 4, Blink Fitness. When Blink Fitness launched, it promised something refreshingly simple. Affordable gyms without the pretension, the high-pressure sales tactics, or the intimidation factor that kept regular people away from traditional fitness clubs. For working-class Americans trying to stay healthy without spending $60 or $80 monthly, Blink represented accessible wellness. But by 2025, even budget fitness has proven unsustainable. Blink Fitness filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in August 2024, listing over $200 million in liabilities and announcing immediate closures of dozens of underperforming locations. The filing came as shock to many members who had been faithfully paying monthly dues, only to arrive one morning to find their gym permanently locked. The challenges were numerous and overlapping. First, the pandemic devastated gym attendance patterns. Millions of Americans canceled memberships and never returned, having discovered home workouts, outdoor exercise, or simply abandoning fitness routines entirely. Blink's membership base never recovered to pre-pandemic levels, leaving facilities with excess capacity and insufficient revenue. Second, competition intensified from multiple directions. Premium players like Equinox and SoulCycle captured high-end customers willing to pay significantly more for boutique experiences. At the budget end, Planet Fitness expanded aggressively with $10 memberships that Blink couldn't match while maintaining service quality. Meanwhile, Peloton and connected home fitness systems gave customers gym alternatives without leaving their homes. Third, real estate became increasingly burdensome. Blink operated in expensive urban markets, particularly New York and New Jersey, where rent increases of 15 to 25% forced locations into unprofitability. Landlords facing their own pressures refused rent reductions, leaving Blink trapped in leases it could no longer afford. Operating costs rose across every category. Utilities climbed 20%. Cleaning supplies and maintenance, critical for gym operations, increased 30%. Insurance premiums jumped as liability concerns grew. Equipment repairs and replacements, always expensive, became more frequent as aging machines broke down under heavy use. For members, the closures created immediate disruption. Many had been charged for future months but couldn't access facilities. Others lost convenient workout locations and faced commutes to distant gyms. Some simply gave up on fitness routines entirely when their neighborhood Blink disappeared. The bankruptcy and closure wave signals trouble for the entire budget fitness sector, suggesting that the economics of providing affordable gym access have become fundamentally broken in many markets. Number 3, the Container Store. For decades, the Container Store was where Americans went to organize their lives. Custom closet systems, storage solutions, organizational tools that promised to transform chaos into order. The brand built a devoted following among suburban families, home organization enthusiasts, and anyone who believed the right storage system could solve their clutter problems. But by 2025, the Container Store is discovering that even devoted customers can't overcome crushing debt and changing retail economics. The company has been warning investors about financial distress for years. By 2024, the Container Store disclosed going concern warnings, meaning auditors questioned whether the business could continue operating. Same-store sales declined double digits for multiple consecutive quarters. Revenue that once approached $1 billion annually had fallen below $750 million, a 25% collapse in just a few years. Debt became the primary burden. The Container Store carries roughly $500 million in liabilities, a crushing load for a specialty retailer with declining revenue. Interest expenses consume tens of millions annually, money that could have funded store renovations, inventory expansion, or competitive pricing strategies. Instead, it simply services debt incurred during better economic times. Competition has been merciless. Amazon offers virtually identical organizational products at 20 to 40% lower prices with next-day delivery. IKEA provides affordable storage solutions that appeal to budget-conscious shoppers. Target and Walmart have expanded their home organization sections, capturing customers who once made special trips to the Container Store. The core customer base has also shifted. Younger generations, burdened by student debt and high housing costs, aren't investing hundreds of dollars in custom closet systems. They're renting smaller spaces, owning less stuff, and prioritizing experiences over possessions. The entire premise of needing elaborate storage solutions feels increasingly outdated to consumers focused on minimalism and financial survival. Inside the Container Store locations, the problems are visible. Sales staff has been reduced dramatically. Store hours have been cut. Inventory, once comprehensive and deep, now displays noticeable gaps. The personalized consultation services that once differentiated the Container Store from competitors have been scaled back or eliminated to reduce labor costs. For communities losing the Container Store locations, the impact extends beyond retail. These stores often anchored shopping centers, drew foot traffic, and provided employment for dozens of local residents. Their closure leaves vacancies that prove difficult to fill, contributing to the slow decline of suburban retail districts. The Container Store's struggle represents more than one company's problems. It reflects a broader truth about modern American retail. Specialty stores selling non-essential goods at premium prices cannot survive when consumers are financially stressed, and alternatives are readily available online at lower cost. Number 2. Walgreens. When you think of endangered American retailers, Walgreens probably doesn't come to mind. It's been a neighborhood fixture for over a century. The corner drugstore where generations filled prescriptions, bought school supplies, grabbed emergency groceries at midnight. With nearly 9,000 locations nationwide, Walgreens seemed too big, too established, too essential to ever face serious trouble. But by 2025, even this pharmacy giant is confronting a financial crisis that has forced dramatic restructuring. The warning signs have been escalating for years. Walgreens announced plans to close up to 2,500 stores over the next 3 years, representing nearly 30% of its entire footprint. This isn't normal market optimization. This is a company in survival mode, desperate to cut costs and stem mounting losses. Financial results have deteriorated sharply. In recent quarters, Walgreens reported losses exceeding $3 billion. Revenue declined as prescription volumes dropped and front-end sales collapsed. Same-store sales fell mid-single digits for consecutive quarters, a devastating trend for a retailer with the Walgreens cost structure. The company's market value has plummeted over 70% from its peak, wiping out tens of billions in shareholder wealth. Multiple pressures are crushing the business simultaneously. Pharmacy reimbursement rates from insurance companies and pharmacy benefit managers have been squeezed relentlessly, leaving Walgreens earning minimal profit or even losing money on many prescriptions. Front-end retail sales, once a reliable profit source, have collapsed as customers shift to Amazon, Walmart, and dollar stores for everyday items. Theft has become an existential threat in many markets. Urban Walgreens locations report shrink rates exceeding 10%, with organized retail crime rings systematically looting stores. The company has been forced to lock up basic items like toothpaste and deodorant behind plexiglass, creating a shopping experience so inconvenient that customers simply go elsewhere. Operational costs continue climbing. Labor expenses increased 15 to 20% as pharmacist shortages forced wage competition. Utilities, insurance, and real estate costs all rose double digits in many markets. Digital transformation investments, necessary to compete with mail-order pharmacies and Amazon, require billions in capital the company doesn't have. The store closures are hitting vulnerable communities hardest. Rural areas are losing their only pharmacy within 30 or 40 miles. Urban neighborhoods are seeing pharmacy deserts expand as multiple nearby locations close simultaneously. Elderly patients, who depend on walking distance prescription access, now face transportation barriers that can literally be life-threatening. Inside surviving Walgreens locations, the decline is unmistakable. Understaffed pharmacies with 2-hour wait times, empty shelves where theft has made stocking certain items pointless, reduced hours that eliminate late-night convenience, self-checkout replacing human cashiers. The neighborhood drugstore experience that defined Walgreens has been replaced by a stripped-down, cost-minimized operation that barely resembles the stores from just 5 years ago. What makes Walgreens' crisis particularly alarming is what it signals about American retail health care. If a company with 9,000 locations, over a century of history, and essential services like pharmacy can face potential collapse, what does that say about the stability of the entire neighborhood drugstore model? The answer is deeply unsettling. Number one, CVS Health. If the financial struggles at Walgreens seemed concerning, the crisis at CVS Health should be genuinely alarming. Because CVS isn't just a drugstore chain, it's a vertically integrated healthcare conglomerate that owns pharmacies, pharmacy benefit management, health insurance through Aetna, and retail clinics. With over 9,500 pharmacy locations and nearly $300 billion in annual revenue, CVS seemed too massive, too diversified, too systemically important to American healthcare to ever face serious jeopardy. But by 2025, even CVS is showing cracks that suggest deep structural problems. The company's market value has collapsed by over 40% from recent highs, erasing roughly $100 billion in shareholder wealth. Credit rating agencies have placed CVS on negative watch, warning that further deterioration could push the company toward junk status. In earnings calls, management has acknowledged that the business model faces unprecedented pressure from multiple directions simultaneously. Store closures have accelerated dramatically. CVS announced plans to close up to 900 locations over the next 3 years, representing roughly 10% of its pharmacy footprint. These aren't just underperforming stores in weak markets. These are profitable locations being sacrificed because the parent company needs cash and cannot sustain the current cost structure. The pharmacy benefit management business, once a reliable profit engine, has become a regulatory and financial nightmare. PBM practices face intense scrutiny from federal and state lawmakers who blame these middlemen for rising drug costs. Major clients are threatening to switch to competitors or bring PBM functions in-house. Profit margins have compressed to levels that make the billions CVS invested in this business increasingly questionable. The Aetna acquisition, completed for $69 billion in 2018, has proven far less successful than projected. Integration challenges persist years later. The promise of seamless healthcare combining insurance, pharmacy, and clinical care has largely failed to materialize. Instead, CVS is managing three complex, troubled businesses that aren't generating the synergies Wall Street was promised. Retail pharmacy economics have deteriorated severely. Reimbursement rates from insurance and Medicare continue falling while costs rise. Pharmacist labor shortages have forced wage increases of 10 to 15%. Rent for prime corner locations has climbed. Theft in urban markets has reached levels that make many stores unprofitable. Front-end retail sales have collapsed as customers buy everyday items elsewhere. The Minute Clinic business, once positioned as a growth driver, has struggled to achieve profitability. At scale, nurse practitioners command high wages. Equipment and compliance costs are substantial. Patient volumes haven't grown as projected. The clinics require significant subsidy from pharmacy operations that can no longer afford to carry them. Debt levels have become concerning. CVS carries over $70 billion in total debt, much of it from the Aetna acquisition. Interest expenses consume billions annually, money desperately needed for store improvements, technology investments, and competitive positioning. As interest rates rose, this debt burden transformed from manageable to oppressive. For American communities, CVS's problems carry enormous implications. This company fills 1 in 4 prescriptions nationwide. It provides healthcare services to tens of millions through Aetna. It operates pharmacies in neighborhoods where it's the only convenient option. If CVS were to face serious distress or forced restructuring, the disruption to American healthcare access would be unprecedented. Inside CVS stores, customers are already experiencing the decline. Pharmacy wait times have extended to hours or even days as understaffing worsens. Store conditions have deteriorated with empty shelves, dirty floors, and minimal customer service. Automated systems and self-checkout replace human interaction. The healthcare experience CVS promised has devolved into a frustrating, impersonal transaction that drives customers toward alternatives. What makes CVS's situation particularly troubling is what it represents. This company spent decades and hundreds of billions of dollars building a vertically integrated healthcare empire. It acquired competitors, expanded services, and positioned itself as essential infrastructure for American healthcare delivery. If even this massive, diversified giant is struggling to survive the current environment, it raises fundamental questions about the sustainability of America's retail healthcare model. Across these 10 companies, patterns emerge that cannot be ignored. Operating costs, from utilities to insurance to labor, have risen at rates that make traditional retail economics unsustainable. Consumer spending has contracted sharply, focusing on absolute essentials while eliminating discretionary purchases. Debt burdens, accumulated during years of cheap money, have become existential threats as interest rates rose, and online commerce continues siphoning revenue from physical locations that can't compete on price or convenience. For millions of Americans, these closures represent more than business failures. They mark the disappearance of familiar routines, trusted resources, and community anchors that made daily life feel stable. The drugstore that filled your prescriptions for 30 years, the gym where you worked out every morning, the store where you bought your wedding dress, the craft store where you took your grandchildren, all vanishing, often with minimal warning. What's unfolding in 2025 isn't merely a retail correction. It's a fundamental restructuring of American commercial life. The businesses that defined suburban and small-town America for generations are discovering that brand, loyalty, nostalgia, and community goodwill cannot overcome financial mathematics when costs rise faster than revenue and debt becomes unsustainable. For neighborhoods watching these closures accelerate, the future looks increasingly uncertain. Will new businesses fill these vacant spaces? Will communities lose essential services permanently? Will the convenient local access that characterized American life for decades give way to longer drives, online ordering, and the gradual disappearance of the physical destinations that once defined our routines? The answer in 2025 remains unclear. What is clear is that the pace of change has accelerated beyond what most people anticipated. The stores you visit today may not be there next year. The brands you trust may be fighting for survival behind quarterly reports you'll never read. And the American retail landscape you've known your entire life is transforming into something unfamiliar, leaving uncertainty where stability once felt guaranteed. If this analysis helped you understand what's really happening across America's economy, there's far more unfolding than most people realize. The closures you're seeing in your own community aren't isolated incidents. They're symptoms of structural changes reshaping how this country lives, shops, and survives.